All eyes on a key swing state today. President Trump and Joe Biden are holding dueling events in Minnesota after trading blows on the campaign trail last night. The president is hoping to turn the state red for the first time in decades, and Joe Biden is trying to stop him. Here's the former vice president just a few minutes ago.
In the midst of this unprecedented national crisis, Trump has given up on even pretending to do his job. That if the president had just started 1 week earlier in March than he did, we'd have 36,000 more people sitting at the dinner table tonight. How many people across the Iron Range? How many empty chairs around those dinner tables? Because of his negligence and selfishness.
And President Trump is set to respond with a great American comeback rally tonight. It comes as the candidates step up the intensity of their attacks in key battleground states. Take a look at this.
If Biden wins, very simple, China wins. If Biden wins, the mob wins. If Biden wins, the rioters, anarchists, arsonists, and flag burners, they win.
If the president had done his job from the beginning, all the people would still be alive. This president should step down.
Joe Biden devoted his entire career to offshoring Wisconsin jobs, outsourcing your factories, throwing open your borders.
I really do view this campaign as a campaign between Scranton and Park Avenue. The way we were raised up here in this area, awful lot of hard work and people busted their neck. All they asked for is a shot, just a shot. All that Trump could see from Park Avenue is Wall Street.
Hey, Jesse, maybe I'll start with you. I think it's Fifth Avenue, not Park Avenue, just, for fact-checking here.
Yeah, I think you just were the only person to fact-check Joe Biden, Dana. I mean, he got away with a whole lot of doozies last night. I don't know. I think Minnesota's in play, and Biden's getting spread very thin. He hasn't been to Minnesota in 1,000 days. And every day he has to go to a state like Minnesota, which Democratic nominees never go to, is a day he's not going to be in a state like Florida. It looks like Trump is doing 5 rallies in 5 battlegrounds in 5 days. And not only that, the whole family's involved. Trump Jr.'s doing 5 battlegrounds in 5. Ivanka's doing 4 battlegrounds in 5. Eric's doing 4. And Laura's doing a bus tour in Florida. So they're really spreading Joe Biden pretty thin right now. He's come out of the basement and he's on defense. And it's clear he wants to talk about the coronavirus. And right now, Minnesota, I think they're averaging about 9 deaths per day. And that's not as big of an issue as it was this summer. The president has pivoted very aggressively to the economy. And that's great, because the economy is right now in a super V, and they're predicting unemployment at 5% next summer. So that's the fastest economic recovery in U.S. history. I know Juan wants to talk about the census report that just came out. Juan, you can't argue with these statistics, so just sit there and listen. In 2019, the average American household made an extra $4,400. It is an all-time high now, median income at $68,000. In just 3 years, the average American family has made nearly $9,000 more under Donald Trump. Under Barack Obama, in 8 years, they only got a $1,000 raise. Income inequality is now squeezing compared to Obama and Biden, where it expanded, and the poverty rate has hit an all-time low. 4 million people have been lifted out of poverty under Donald Trump. A number like that we haven't seen in over 50 years. That's why the president's going to hammer the economic message, and I think that's why he'll win.
So, Juan, I'll give you a chance to respond to that. I did want to ask you one question, though, about Minnesota and Republicans. Is it sort of fool's gold the way that Texas is for Democrats?
Minnesota, Dana?
Yes.
Because I think I just saw that Biden's up 10 in Minnesota, so I don't think that's
what I
fool's
mean.
gold.
Meaning that, let me clarify. No, I should clarify. So Democrats keep saying they're going to win statewide races in Texas, and they never do. Republicans are trying to win statewide in Minnesota, and it has been elusive to them. President Trump's come closer than most, but this time around, do you think that Republicans are going to fall short again in Minnesota?
Well, I mean, obviously there's an opportunity there given the trouble that happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd And we've gone over some of the issues like, the city council going back and forth on defund or reform the police, however you want to, put that together. So I think the president must think that, that message about law and order and the like has some resonance there. But I don't know that it's working given what I've just said about the polls. But I wanted to respond to Jesse as well and say, Jesse, I think there are a lot of Americans who are going through real economic pain right now. And a lot of that pain, that economic pain in terms of unemployment specifically, is tied directly to the coronavirus. And we know from the president's own words that he wasn't straight with us when it came to how he handled
the virus. It's not tied to the virus. It's tied to him shutting it down and then reopening up and then building it back the way it was going gangbusters before.
Well, I'm thinking that, when I look at other countries, our peers in the world, they've handled it better and their economies are coming back faster.
That's actually false,
and our economy won't come back.
Economic contraction in the United States less than every single developed nation.
Okay, look, I can see that our death rate, our infection rate, much higher than other developed countries, Jesse. And what I'm saying to you is until we Americans get together and crush this coronavirus, we can't expect that our economy is going to have a resurgence. And that means we can't be involved in politicizing masks, politicizing when a vaccine is coming. We can't be putting pressure on our CDC officials and telling them, oh, yeah, you're wrong about when the vaccine's coming.
All right.
That's got to stop, and I think Americans see that.
I agree. Let's not politicize it.
The politics is here. Greg, I want you to listen to Joe Biden talking about the mask mandate. He's still talking about it.
I would like to see the governors enforce mask wearing, period. I can do that on federal property. As president, I will do that. And we could have a fine for them not doing it. Look, this is about saving people's lives.
What do you make of him not landing on one consistent message?
That's Joe. He'll say whatever somebody wants him to say, and if he realizes it wasn't the right thing, he'll just change it. But somebody did fact check him. This is John Carney. John Carney, I think it was over at Breitbart. I always get him confused with his brother Tim. That quote that Joe thinks is so clever. It's a election. It's Scranton versus Park Avenue, and he's right, except that Park Avenue supports Biden by a factor of an 8-to-1 margin.
Yep.
Right? And Trump gets more money from Scranton than Park Avenue. So that's a good fact check. I have to credit John Carney. This thing that he keeps saying, if we just started a week earlier, you would have saved 30,000 lives. Why does he just say a week? Why doesn't he say 2 weeks? Why doesn't he say 3 weeks? Do those lives not matter? Or are we starting to get into even deeper into the impeachment territory where we knew that we had completely missed this thing because the Democrats are obsessed with impeachment? But it's funny. He says that Trump is responsible for all the deaths. And he said the data backs him up. And, of course, that's not true. But Joe's got to be super careful because he's going to run out of room for future demonization. If he keeps making it bigger and bigger and bigger, maybe Donald Trump next week will be responsible for not all past death, but all future death. Maybe he can link him to killing, I don't know, Jesus or JFK or MLK. I mean, the Dems, I keep thinking they've hit a limit on how evil they can portray Trump. I think they stopped comparing Trump to Hitler, not because it was unfair to Trump, because they thought it was unfair to Hitler, because they actually think that he is worse than Hitler. It's getting to a point where it is what's always been hilarious, watching them create these evil fantasies. But I just wonder where they're going to go next. Where, Dana? Where?
Yeah.
Tell me.
Once you've already gone there, there's nowhere to go. Emily,
Worse
let's give
than
you the last
Hitler.
word.
Greg, there is definitely no limit. I'd like to address the clips that we played in the beginning of this segment. We know that Biden plays the union angle well, right? That's why throughout the course of his career, he's set up those events so frequently and really relied on them as his comfort zone. But while he's palling around with the union bosses, I think he should be more concerned with the union workers. As Dana mentioned, we know that Trump carried more union workers in Minnesota in 2016 than any Republican since Reagan. But he's delivered on the promises that he made to them. This administration expedited mining contracts, which is critical in Minnesota. He renegotiated NAFTA, and many union members are upset and concerned about the direction that the Democratic Party is going with gun control and obviously energy. Quick final point. Remember in July when Biden held that virtual event with Minnesota union bosses a few days after he released his environmental plan? The union bosses cheered the plan, but a few days later, the workers were polled, and they said that what was most important to them was steady, good-paying jobs. And what brings steady, good-paying jobs to them? They associate it with traditional energy and infrastructure jobs. The renewable energy is not the source of it, so that's where Biden should be concerned.